what if Hanukkah would have benefited from the miracle?
Right. So the Gemara says, like Nathan says, now Nathan gave one explanation. He's going according to one of the opinions. He says that they also benefited from the miracle. So let me read you the language of the Gemara. The Gemara said, right. The Gemara says, but remember, Sukkah, the ladies are exempt from Sukkah. Ladies are exempt
not exempt from Kiddush first night.
Okay. But the sitting in the Sukkah, ladies are exempt.
First night Kiddush, they're all.
Okay. And the question is, and outside of Israel, it's 2 nights of Kiddush. The question is why are the ladies obligated? Because the language of the Gemara is they were also in the miracle. So what does it mean they were also in the miracle? Nathan goes with the explanation they were also in the miracle is that the miracles, morning Simon, that happened to us by Hanukkah was applied to the women as well, because there were decrees against the women. Every lady who would get married, the Greeks said you first have to spend the night, you have to first have relations with the Greek nobleman first, and therefore they were saved from that. Pesach, the women are obligated 4 cups of wine because they were also saved from Egypt. Purim, there was a decree against the destruction of the women, and therefore equally to the men. They wanted to annihilate the whole Jewish community, and therefore because they benefited from all the miracles, therefore the rabbi said we're going to obligate them in all those mitzvahs. Now, when it comes to, that's one understanding. There's another understanding of the Rishonim, and not necessarily because they were benefited from the miracle, it's because the miracle happened through them in all those cases. Hanukkah, there's a story of Yehudis, that she, a very brave young lady that gave to drink and to eat to one of the big people in the Greek community. And as a result of that, when he went to sleep, she went ahead and she chopped off his head and carried his head back with her. And then when she showed the head of that person, and then the Greeks fled. The Jews went to war and defeated a lot of them. So the miracle happened through her. Also, the Jews were redeemed from Egypt, the merit of the righteous women. And also, as we know, Purim was through the Esther. So because a lot of the miracle happened through the women, the rabbis obligated the women in those situations, the Hanukkah and Purim and Pesach. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Omer Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says, Achsanai, we're on 23A1 on the right side. Achsanai chayav b'ner Hanukkah. Someone who's a guest. If someone's a guest in someone else's house, the Gemara is going to clarify what the case is talking about. Someone's a guest in someone else's house. Under certain circumstances, that guest is chayav b'ner Hanukkah, is obligated in ner Hanukkah. Now, if you recall, what is the main halacha is that to fulfill the mitzvah of Hanukkah, 1 candle each night covers the whole house, right? So the question is, now we know in the Sephardic community, many of them just have 1 menorah for the whole house. Not each person lights. However, in the Ashkenaz community, their custom is everybody lights, right? So even if they're going to be a guest somewhere else, they're going to light the menorah. The question is, if you have someone lighting for you in your house, technically the mitzvah is on the house, as long as someone's lighting in the house, even if the person, a member of the house, is not there, leaves that house. Let's say someone's married and and the wife is home, so the wife could technically light, and that will cover the whole house. That's what the Gemara is going to say over here. The Gemara is going to say, first, Rav Sheshes makes a statement. If you're a guest, you go to someone else's house, you have to light ner Hanukkah. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Zera. Rav Zera says, Mereish Hava Amina, Mareish Kiavi Ben Erav. In the beginning, when I was in the yeshiva, when he was single and he was a guest in someone else's house, Mishtatafna b'pritei b'hadish pisa. I joined with the owner of the house, where I was staying, where I was sleeping, in the expenses of the oil. I gave him some prutos. I gave him some prutos, like the smallest coin in those days, small copper coin. I wanted to have a portion in the oil, so I bought a little portion in the oil by giving a small coin. I didn't need to have equal ownership in the oil. I just had to be part of it, that's how I fulfilled my obligation of Hanukkah. Because I was no longer in my own house. I didn't. It wasn't like I was still part of my house. I was still eating by my parents were paying for all my expenses. I was independent. Once I was independent, if I went somewhere else, I have to go ahead and light Hanukkah. But if I'm a guest in someone's house, I don't have to light it myself. I could just join into his lighting by paying and be part of the lighting. However, Boston in this CV, it said once I got married, Amina, and then there was times that I would travel. I was travel even though I was married. I would travel sometimes to go learn Torah. Maybe my rabbi was a certain place, and I would travel, and might have been stuck for. I might have been away for Hanukkah. So hashta vadelu sricha. Now he says I don't need to give any coins. I don't have to be. I don't have to pay. Join into the lighting of my host because they come madliki alai begav beitai, because it's being lit for me in my own house. Because my wife, he says, my wife is lighting the menorah. We just established a few moments ago a lady is obligated in the menorah, so she's someone who's obligated menorah. So therefore, she could go ahead and so the husband and the wife are like one, and therefore he could fulfill his obligation by his wife lighting the menorah. As long as he knows that his wife is lighting the menorah for him. Now, I know like a lot of Svardim, let's say that if they're in some of them when they're in college campus, and I think many of them might not light the menorah because all their expenses are being paid by their parents. So, and they're part of their parents' lighting, even though they're not home, even though they're not there, they're part of their parents' lighting. However, the Ashkenazim, where everybody, we don't just fulfill the obligation. The children just don't fulfill by the parents lighting. They light themselves, even if they're somewhere else. If they're somewhere else, they're going same way they light in their house. They're not just going to rely on their parents lighting. So therefore, if they're somewhere else, they also will light somewhere else, even though they are dependent on their parents, and their parents is paying all their bills, and they're still part of that household, right? Because one of the things is if your parents someone's parents pay all their bills, they're part of that house, and therefore technically they would be able to fulfill their obligation by their parents lighting for them, even though they're not there. Now it is brought down that even though we have this concept that you can fulfill your obligation by the parents lighting. So in general, he says in the Yalkut Yosef, when a person lights the Ner Chanukah, ideally they should gather all the members. Here we're talking about a case when he said they should gather all the members of the house that are reliant on this person's table, meaning he's talking for the Svardim that are all going to fulfill their obligation with the lighting of the Balabayit, lighting of their father. They're all, but the Sfardim, many of them, even if they're away at college, they won't light.
But they're all not gathered.
Very good. Yeah, at that point, you're correct. You gather all the members of the house that are connected to the table, that are reliant on the table. They should be there at the time of the lighting ceremony when the father is lighting the menorah. Kedei lefarsem hanes. In order to publicize the miracle. Now, he says if somebody did not light, let's say the balabayit, the father did not light the menorah in the beginning of the night, and he came home at a late hour, and everybody in the house is already sleeping, if it's possible to wake up one or two members of the house, if it's possible, meaning I presume depending on what type of people they are, if you wake them up, is the world coming to an end if you wake them up, or they're happy to be woken up, or whatever. If it's possible to wake one or two people up, in order they should hear the brachos, they should hear the blessings, and that's more publicizing of a miracle. Hine matov. That's great. If not, then you should say the bracha yourself and light the Hanukkah menorah.
It doesn't say that if you have 6 kids, you should have the wife like 6 kids, and the husband is covered by it.
Oh, he does. He right, right. He
more
right, right. He does. Right, yeah, he does talk about that. That if a guy talks about the guy in the kollel that's coming home late, should the wife light? You know, maybe the wife should the wife light and cover him. And you're saying also because of all the kids. There is there is discussion of that. Um, but I just wanted one more point over here. It says anybody that's counted that they're lighting for them as part of the house, even though if he's even if he's not there at the time of the lighting, he fulfills his obligation. Um, then he says, if you're a guest that nobody's lighting for you in your house, then you have to join in. You give some money to the owner of the house that you're staying by. And if the owner of the house, gives you a part of the oil, then as a gift, that's also good. Sometimes you have to specifically pay for it. He gifts it to you, part of it. That's also, here's some oil. This is for you. And then whatever, then that would also work. So here's Nathan's point. Women, he says, a lady could cover her husband lighting the menorah. Therefore, if the husband is not able to be home and he's not going to be able to come to a late hour in the night, now the question is what's called, how late is that? He says it's appropriate that he should appoint his wife to light the menorah at Tzeitzach HaChavim, at when it comes dark, and then he fulfills his obligation. But the agent of the person is like the person himself. That's he does mention that. I don't know how in practice how people are going to just rely on their wife lighting for them. They're going to say, especially here in America, where we're lighting most of publicizing is for the people of the house. If we light inside the house, we're not lighting outside the house. So I don't believe they wouldn't. I would doubt even the Sephardim today would just do that because it's mainly for the members of the house. So therefore, they would wait till the husband comes home, and the lady would stay up, and the husband would light the menorah. That's what I would think in practice they would do. Okay. Now the Gemara says, Amar B'Shuma Levi. B'Shuma Levi says the following: Kol hashmonim kulon yofil l'ner Chanukah. All oils are good for ner Chanukah. Mean they're all kosher. The Shem Zayit min hamufchad, and Shem Zayit is the best. Now, and olive oil is the best, right, Simon? Now we know about olive oil being the best because of the miracle happened. We prefer olive oil even over candles because of the miracle happened through olive oil. But there's another thing that the Gemara is going to talk about is the clarity of the light, the beauty of the light of the menorah, which maybe a candle might match it, but it doesn't match it the fact that the miracle happened through the menorah. So we'll see now. The Gemara is going to now. This is in contrast to Shabbat. Shabbat, we say bameh madlikin, bama madlikin. There are certain things you can't. There are certain oils that are not appropriate to light. because those oils are not so good. They don't burn so well. And there's a concern you might come to. Thank you very much, Simon. There's a concern you might come to fix the light of the menorah on the Shabbat candles on Shabbat. But when it comes to the menorah, we hold kavta in zokakla. If the light of the menorah goes out, if you lit the menorah and had enough oil that it could last for the duration of time that it's supposed to last, even if it goes out, you're not required to relight it. So even if it's not the best oil, it's still most likely going to last the amount of time that's necessary. You only have to last till a half hour after dark. So therefore, you would be able to use that oil for the menorah. So therefore, that's the leniency when it comes to the oil of menorah. In contrast, the oil for Shabbat. So therefore, we say kol hashma. Therefore, all the oils are allowed to be used for the menorah. Kol hashmanim are able to be used. Kol hashman kula yafel in there. And they're all good. They're all able to be used. However, shemen zayit min hamufchar. Olive oil is the best. Amar Abaye. Abaye said the following: Mereish in the beginning, havimahadema an mishcha de shumshemi. You know, Abaye's rabbi was Rabbi Manachmeni. He brought him up, and he says Abaye reports a lot of things about his rabbi. He says his rabbi originally used to use sesame seed oil. Now sesame seed oil is going back how many years, Adam? Right? A couple thousand years. Right? He used to use sesame seed oil. Why did he use sesame seed oil? For Hanukkah. Ha-mashach nehoretvei. Because this oil lasts for, you get more miles for the gallon. It lasts longer. This oil lasts longer, so the light of the menorah stays on longer. And olive oil doesn't have its, a pint of olive or 3 ounces of olive, certain amount of olive oil, certain amount of this sesame seed oil, the light lasts longer. However, and you can understand that it's on longer, there's more publicizing of the miracle, more time the menorah is on. However, even the Shamal of Yeshua Levi, but once I heard Rabbi Yeshua Levi that says olive oil is the best oil to use, once I heard they said that olive oil is the best, then the rabbi, then he went after olive oil, and not because what we understand. And what was his reasoning? Not because the miracle happened with olive oil. That's the point I want to emphasize. Why? He said, the light of the olive oil is a more clearer light. It's a nicer light. And if it's a nicer light, therefore it's better to beautify the mitzvah. And that's what I'm saying, that could be that the candles that we use today is a very similar light. I don't know how much difference. Do you notice a difference in the light of a wick of a menorah or the light of a candle? So I'm saying, I don't know there's such a difference, but the difference would be because the miracle happened through the olive oil. But our Gemara is focusing on the difference of the quality of the light, and he's saying the quality of the light would supersede the miles per gallon, how long the light that would last. Because obviously we're talking about putting in enough oil that it would last in whatever the minimum amount of time that's required. You get a little extra miles on the other one, but it's still you still got the mitzvah, you got the amount of time by the olive oil, plus they have the right very beautiful light. And we know there is this concept called Sidur Mitzvah. When you do a mitzvah, how do you do a mitzvah? You're supposed to do it in the nicest way possible. You could do it. So therefore, if you could do the mitzvah with a clearer light, that's beautifying it. Then it's like if you have someone who has a nicer handwriting, So you buy a mezuzah that someone has a nicer handwriting, right? He's more skilled, has a better hand. So you buy that mezuzah over a mezuzah that's just okay. Yeah, it's an aleph, it's a bet. He wrote a mezuzah, but it's not so nice. It's not as beautiful. And you have this idea to beautify a mitzvah. Ze keli fa'anfehu. And I want to beautify. And that's a special mitzvah people need to be aware. Iboilu. Now the Gemara, now that we're talking about the olive oil, and now there was discussion, the Beit Midrash regarding the oil the olive oil that they use in the production of black ink, the Gabel Ola Ashem. Is the I skipped one line. Rabbi Shuma Levi. Rabbi Shuma Levi says, Kol Hashmanim, all oils, Yafin L'dio, are good for the process of making black ink, for the purpose of writing Sefer Torah, Zuzah, Tefillin. All oils are good, and we're going to clarify what do you mean oils? What oils are you using for the black ink? We'll clarify. V'shemen zayid min hamufchar. But olive oil used in the production of black ink, that is the best. See, they want to know, and again, if it's the best, then most probably that's the one you want to use, ideally, for the mitzvah. What is this quality of the olive oil that you're saying is very good? What part of the process? There's different parts of the process of making black ink. Is when they would go ahead and so it seems like they would go ahead, they would light up, use oil, they would light something, and the smoke from the light, they would light it by a glass, let's say a glass lantern, and a white glass, and then the smoke would go against the walls of the glass. It would create a certain soot, again, and then you would go ahead and a certain black soot, and then you would go ahead, what do you call it? Soot, sorry. And then you would go ahead and you would scrape it off the walls of the glass. And then you would add some, then you would also add some oil, and then you would mix that oil to the soot, and then you would go ahead and you would add it to that black thing, you would add to the concoction of making ink. So which part of the process is the olive oil good? For the first part of lighting the lamp, using olive oil to light the lamp, which will create the smoke, that black smoke, that smoke that will go against the walls of the glass, or is referring to the oil that you use later on after you scrape the soot off the glass. After you scraped it off. It's S-U-T.
No, it isn't.
That's but it's S-O-O-T, right? So and then you scrape it off, and then you mix the oil. Is it the oil in the beginning for the lighting part, or the oil that you add to that black stuff?
It strikes me that if you use inferior oil, you get more soot, and then you'd want to use pure olive oil after. If the beauty of using olive oil is that it burns clean, you're not going to get a lot of soot.
Okay.
I don't know.
The beauty we said, it's a clear light, right? The clear light
may not give off any soot.
Interesting.
I don't know.
It sounds like it would give. It's just a question of what the level will be, right? Because it says kol hashmanim, they're all good for ink, Nathan. It's just the question is what's the best. So the gadel olashem, is it for the part of the kneading process, K-N-E-A-D, or is it for the smoking process? So the Gemara says, Toshma, come in here. The Tani we learned in a Braita. Rav Shmuel Bar Zutri, he said over a Braita, he says, Kol hashmanim yofin l'dio. All oils are good for the process of making the black ink. V'shem zayid min hamufchar. But olive oil is the best. Bein legabel, bein la'ashem. Whether in both aspects, both parts of the processing, it's the best. And again, knowing that this is the best is important for us. you tell the manufacturer, please use the olive oil in the beginning and the end, but that's going to help. We'll have a better, nice, better ink, a clearer ink, a nice, better dye, better black ink for the mezuzah that you're going to be writing with. He had the following text of the Braita. Kol hashonim yofeletyo. All smoke, whatever you use to smoke the glass and to scrape and you'll scrape that off. That all oils are all things are good, but the Shem is Zayid min hamufcha. So he's saying that it would seem like specifically in the first stage of the process of lighting up the lantern, which will create the smoke, which will create the soot to remove, the best thing to use is olive oil. Not necessarily at the second stage of mixing after you scraped it off the walls. Now to mix them with, you could use any oil would also do the equal trick. But you have to make sure you in the process, the beginning, use this oil. We're going to get back to the next line tomorrow. I want to start the next piece now. Omer Rav Chia bar Ashi Omer Rav, Hamadlik ner shel Chanukah, Sorich levarech. The one who's lighting, if you light a ner Chanukah, you have to make say a bracha. And we know the bracha is always general. You make a bracha before you do the mitzvah. So the one who's going to light the menorah, he's the one who says the bracha before you light. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, now it would seem that the language from Rav Chia is only if you light. What if you don't light a menorah? Let's say you just see a menorah, and you see a menorah, and you don't plan on lighting a menorah that night. Let's say you're on a boat, you're on a little boat, and whatever the case is, you're not lighting a menorah. Would you say the bracha she'asa nisim lavotene bayom mehi bazman hazeh by seeing the menorah? Or the first night of Hanukkah, would you also say a she'achiyana by seeing the menorah for the first time? So the first opinion of the Gemara seems to say that the ability to say a bracha on a menorah is only if you light the menorah. But it sounds like there's an argument here. Because the second rabbi, but Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar, not Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar, Rabbi Yirmiyah says, if you see a Ner Hanukkah, you have to go ahead and say a bracha. So Rashi says, what does Rashi say? Haroyeh, Rashi says, ha'oved b'shuk. You're walking in the market. V'roeh be'echad ha'chatzerot. And you see in one of the courtyards, dolek, you see the light of the menorah. And then Rashi says, Masasi b'shatim b'shem Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben Yehuda. This bracha is only required not for everybody who walks in the market. You're running late in the market and you didn't come home yet to light the menorah. No. Which sounds like that's the first opinion. The first opinion, Rashi, sounds like you're walking, you're in the street. Good morning, Samuel. You're in the street. You go ahead and you're in the you see a menorah. You say a bracha, and then when you come home, you say another bracha. That's what it sounds like. The first opinion, but then Rashi says, I found that the lohuska bracha zu, very good. The lohuska bracha zu, this bracha is only required elemi shalohidik bebeito adayin, someone that they did not light in his house yet. So this language of Rashi is oliyoshe b'svina, someone who is sitting in a boat. So the case when Rashi is the guy sitting in a boat, I don't think he's planning. I don't know. It doesn't sound like he's going to be home. Is he going to be home that night to light later on? He's not going to be home that night till later on. He's sitting in a boat. Not clear. So this language of Rashi, you could read into Rashi. There's two ways to understand this Rashi. Does Rashi mean this blessing is said only someone who's not going to light at all in their house that night, and no one lit for them? Rashi says, Misha lo hidlik, you didn't light yet in your house. Now, if you didn't light in your house yet, but if you plan on lighting in your house, maybe you could still say the bracha now. Because, and what are you going to say? You're not going to say, you're not lighting the menorah. You just observe a menorah. So one way you can read the Rashi is that you're in the market, you didn't come home yet, you see a menorah, you can say the bracha, the first night you'll say two bracha shechianu. Or you can learn the Rashi, perhaps. This is how the halacha seems to go, is that this law, by the way, it's in the Shulchan Aruch, is if no one's lighting for you in your house. Let's say someone is independent, right? Let's say he's not married, he has his own house, and he's not going to be home that night to light. And he sees, and he's not going to be able to light wherever he is, wherever he's going to be. He's traveling, he's in the desert, wherever he is. He's on a boat. He's not going to be lighting that night, and no one's lighting for him. That's where he should say the bracha, see the menorah. And that's in Shulchan Aruch, that should be the halacha of of seeing. We'll see more about it maybe tomorrow about seeing the Ner Chanukah. Let's continue in the Gemara. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, Yom Rishon, on the first day, he says, Haroye Mevorach Beis. He says two blessings the first day. Umadlik, and the one who lights the menorah says how many blessings the first night? 3, as Simon Gimel. Bekan ve'elech, afterwards, Madlik Mevorach Shtayim. The one who's lighting the menorah says 3 brachot. What are 3 brachot? Madlik Ner Chanukah, Shasa Nisim, Shechianu. That's the 3 the first night for the guy who's lighting, 2 the second night for the guy who's just seeing. And the guy who's seeing says 1 blessing. Then you mean on the second and third night. The first night, the guy who sees says Shasa Nisim Lavasenu and also Shechianu. The second night, the third night, you drop the Shechianu because Shechianu is only said the first night, and you don't say Shechianu the second night of Hanukkah, and therefore that's why the guy who lights goes from 3 blessings to 2, and the guy who sees the menorah goes from 2 blessings to 1. Okay, we're going to get ready for davening. We should try to put our mindset, total focus, total kavanah, and have a very good davening. Have a great day. Thank you very much, Simon. Ronnie, have a great day.
Thank you, Rabbi. You too.
Thank you. Great having you, Ronnie.